So today we did a practice called Nadi Shodhana, which I mentioned is purifying. Well, Nadi means subtle energy channel, of which we have 72,000 in the body. And Shodhana means to purify. So purifying the subtle energy channels. And this is a practice that I have consistently done since I returned from India. Um, for no reason other than the fact that just really I could feel the benefits. It really resonated with me as a practice. Um, yeah, so and I many people. I remember a guy who did my courses in Ireland last year, and we did Nadi Shodhana one day, and he just was like, "Wow." He just said it was so transformative for him to have that experience. And he was like, that alone was just like made the whole course incredible. So it really can be. It's a very amazing practice, Nadi Shodhana, and the reason it is so amazing is because well, it purifies the energy channels, but also it has this effect because we're using alternate nostrils. It balances our masculine and feminine energy. So this isn't a conversation of gender at all. We all have masculine and feminine energy. Everyone does, whatever you identify as. And I used the analogy in the last course that we did of a river. So you have your riverbed, and then you've the flow of the water. And the flow of the water can be compared to this feminine energy. It's like flowy, it's creative, um, and then you have the masculine, which is the riverbed, which provides the structure, the support. And these just give you an idea, even that visual gives you an idea of the different qualities of masculine and feminine. But like I said, it's like whether you're like a man has like, for example, I have feminine and masculine energy within me. And it's about balancing those energies within myself. So let's say I'm not so like, if I was too in my masculine, I could be super perfectionist, really analytical, and like overly disciplined, overly structured, right? And then, so for me, it would be important to be more in creativity, more in surrender, more in flow, right? More in this receptive energy. And these are the qualities of feminine energy. And Nadi Shodhana is a really effective way, a practice whereby we can balance those energies within us. So yeah, that gives you an idea of the different energies. It's, we also have the solar, which is masculine, and the lunar, which is feminine. And there's many different energies on either side of whether masculine or feminine. And it's not a competition, it's about balancing them within ourselves so we can live a balanced life. So yeah, that gives you an idea on Nadi Shodhana. It's far deeper than just, the word, like the translation is alternate nostril breathing. That's what many people call it. It's a far deeper practice than that. We're working with energy here. We're balancing energy. So yeah, that gives you an idea of Nadi Shodhana. And the right nostril, so just so you know, the right nostril relates to the masculine, and the left relates to the feminine, right? And the right nostril, which is masculine, relates to the left hemisphere of the brain and the right side of the body. So right nostril, right side of body, but left hemisphere of the brain. Left nostril, feminine, feminine, left side of body, right hemisphere. So as you deepen your practice, which can take some time when we begin to get really subtle with Nadi Shodhana, you can actually feel energy like let's say I was working with the right, I could feel, I breathe in through the right, I can feel energy in the left hemisphere of the brain. So yeah, that gives you an idea. And we can also do techniques like specific ones, like if you feel like you're super out of balance in your masculine, or the masculine is too overpowering, you can do a specific technique called Chandra Bedana, which is about where you just do alternate nostril breathing technique, but it's inhale left, exhale right. Inhale left, exhale right. Inhale left, exhale right. But for now, especially because you guys are only starting, you don't need to know things on that subtler level. It just gives you an idea, but there's many different practices we can do. When we truly begin to tune in to ourselves, our energy, our breath, we can begin to curate our own practice, like in any moment, based off what we need in that moment, energetically, mentally, emotionally. And with that, as I speak about energetics, what comes to me is parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. So parasympathetic is your rest and digest. Sympathetic is your fight or flight. Now, fight or flight gets a really bad rap, but we have this stress response for a reason. The reason it gets a bad rap is because many of us are chronically stressed. But yeah, so basically these practices can be really helpful in balancing the nervous system as well. And promoting, especially because many of us are in that state of fight or flight, once we begin to connect to this lunar feminine energy, it can move us more into parasympathetic, which promotes healing, homeostasis, allows the body to do self-repair, which, yeah, really promotes healing. So, yeah, this is Nadi Shodhana, right? So that gives you a little bit of theory on that. Now, the other thing I'm going to go into today, because I've been speaking a lot about identity, and I feel like, a lot of meditation is about unraveling the layers, right? So when we go inwards, we can become aware of thoughts, emotions, sensations. And it's as we go inwards, we can realize what's not us, right? So who we aren't, right? And the more we realize who is not the true us, we can then connect to who we truly are in our essence. So I mentioned before, anything that you can change is not the true you, because it can change. So your bank account can change, your job can change, your age can change, your body can certainly change, your circumstances can change, your emotions, your thoughts, sensations, the symptoms you experience, disease, they can all change. But there's this aspect of you that's unchanging. This is pure awareness. This is who you truly are. So what I'm going to speak about today is a little bit about emotions and dis-ease, because this is a huge thing for people where they become completely identified with their emotions, and they also become identified with disorders or diseases or whatever you want to call them, conditions, right? So I'll start with emotions, right? You think of the experience, right? Someone might declare themselves as, I am depressed, right? Now, it's just inaccurate, right? And if I say right now, if I say I am depressed, there is such a permanence to that statement. There is no part of that statement that gives space that, firstly, it's not who I am, it's an emotion. And also, it's transient, so it's subject to change. It's impermanent. And this is where the English language for us can get tricky, because it's not cohesive between mind, body, and soul. So I am and add nothing. That's who you truly are. Just I am. Okay? But for many people, when they say I am depressed, or like you think about that as now that's that person's world, right? I am depressed. So they wake up in the morning and even if they haven't felt depressed yesterday or for a few hours, it's become part of their identity that they're a depressed person. So they're kind of just waiting for it to happen, right? So what happens to this person? How does this identity get formed? Well, it gets formed because this person, at their essence, is pure awareness. They are peace. But through the process of their life, they have accumulated emotions and thoughts, and those emotions haven't been digested. So what is the same as if I eat a meal, right? If I eat a heavy meal and I eat a lot, I feel heavy, right? I'm kind of walking around and it's like I'm heavy, carrying a big load in my belly, right? Until eventually my digestive system begins to digest it, and then all going well, I feel light again. Now, it's what happens for people in terms of their emotions is they have an event that happened in their life and they don't digest the emotions or the mental part of it either. So psychologically and emotionally, they're still stuck in the past. And it's like they're carrying that on their back and they feel heavy because it's an emotional load that they're carrying with them, right? So this continues, and it might start that they feel heavy sometimes because they haven't processed the event, but over time it just accumulates, and maybe another thing happens and there's more heaviness, and then another thing happens and there's more heaviness, to the point where heaviness, so this person is peace at their core, but now heaviness has become their familiar experience. It has now become more familiar to them than the peace that they are. So now they begin to say, you know what, I feel depressed, feel a bit depressed, right? And then that continues, and they go and see a doctor or they go and see someone, and the person says, you know what, you're diagnosed with depression, and we'll give you a tablet, and hopefully that will make you feel better, without addressing any of the root causes of how that person has gone from being peace to feeling depressed, right? Now that person is told they are depressed. So now that's their identity. I'm depressed. And that's who they are. And they have no idea that that could change. It's now a permanent part of their identity, right? Until they might watch a video like this and they might be like, oh God, that did happen actually. At one stage in my life, maybe it was young as a kid, but I did feel free and I did feel light. And then some stuff happened, and then I began to feel heavy. And then something else happened. And then I began to feel depressed, and it became more familiar until someone told me, oh, you have depression. And it became part of my identity. So for that person, what they've got to realize is, they don't have to realize it, but what's helpful for them to realize if they want to heal is depression, the feeling of heaviness, which is what depression is associated with. It's a heaviness, a lack of motivation, a feeling of stuckness, a feeling of like dejection, is they just feel stuck, right? And then they get the diagnosis that this is who they are. So they think that's the way it's always going to be now. Like, I am now just a depressed person. That's who I am, right? But for them to realize is who they are at their essence is peace. And they've just accumulated baggage mentally and emotionally that led to this experience of depression that became familiar. And this is where it gets tricky for people, because they'll be like, but I still feel depressed. And I'm like, I understand you feel depressed. That's part of being human. I can feel depressed. Anyone on this call can feel depressed. That's part of the human experience. But when I feel depressed, and because I've never had a diagnosis, I don't go into a story of, oh, well, that's just because I've been told I have depression and this is who I am. No, when it arises, it's like, okay, wow, like this feeling of heaviness has come upon me. Can I embrace that experience? Can I embrace that as part of my human experience and allow it to be there? and understanding that it's transient, it comes and goes. But at this stage, that emotion just wants to be felt. And then for someone who actually feels that, more often in terms of their time, it's then to ask them, investigate, what were these events? What has led to this heaviness, this feeling of stuckness? And we can begin to go back and process those emotions and process that trauma, whatever word you want to use, and then they can digest it. They can digest the emotions like you digest a meal, and they can access their inherent lightness of being. And that's healing, right? So how can this relate to you guys? It's just to notice that anywhere you might say, because like I can even do it at times where it's like, I am angry or I am sad. And instead just saying, okay, I feel sad. I feel angry. I feel whatever it might be, whatever emotion. And even that just creates a little bit of space. Because it's like, oh, it's a feeling. It's not who I am, it's a feeling. And even I sometimes say, I'm aware of this temporary experience of sadness inside me. It's like, oh wow, there's space there, and it's temporary, it will pass. So these are different ways that we can just reframe how we feel, essentially, and our emotions. And it just moves from that feeling of the emotion being permanent to it being transient. And the same can be said for diseases and also anxiety, right? Many people would just say, oh, I'm an anxious person, right? That's just who I am. And for that person, if I say, if that's my identity, I am an anxious person, just by default, I'm naturally going to feel anxious more of the time because it's my identity. And when I'm not feeling anxious, I'm probably going to be worried about when I'm next going to feel anxious, which is going to lead to me feeling anxious again. So you can see identity is like it can be a real trap for people, right? And this is where diagnoses can be unhelpful. They're helpful, they're only helpful if they can empower the person in how they can heal. Otherwise, they are just a prison. So unless a diagnosis is giving you some sort of sense of empowerment in, oh, wow, okay, so this diagnosis is teaching me perhaps what is causing this disease, what is causing me to feel this way, and then what steps can I take to come back into balance. So yeah, anxiety is another one. Many people just say, I am an anxious person. And I've mentioned this before in my thing. The new thing is ADHD, right? And it's like ADHD is just, it's a word. It's actually 4 letters, ADHD, right? But what does that even mean? Like, what does that mean? It's just 4 letters. But so many people identify with it now. So what happens is they have an experience of themselves that maybe their thoughts are a little bit busy. Maybe they can't sit still. Maybe there's other types of symptoms or sensations they experience. And then they get told, you have ADHD. That's your diagnosis. Go and have a good life. But it doesn't matter because that person lives in a world now of ADHD. Whereas what I would say to someone who has been diagnosed with that is, what does that mean? So if you have a busy mind, have you tried meditation? Because I had a busy mind before I started meditation. Many people do. And then restlessness, not being able to sit still. Many people have this. Many people can't sit still. And there can be other sensations and experiences that that person has. But at their essence, their peace, their awareness. And that's empowering for them to realize that, and really just whatever current experience they have is just an accumulation of mental, emotional, and maybe even physical imbalances that is now manifesting as an experience within themselves. And I always like to use myself as an example because it can be really helpful for people that I'm not just talking about this in theory. I was diagnosed with arthritis and ankylosing spondylitis. I had these. I was told I would never walk again. I was told I wouldn't play sport. I was told like blah, 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 right? Telling me how my life is going to be, right? Until I was like, no, I'm going to decide how my life is going to be. So, but when I lived in the world of I have arthritis and ankylosing spondylitis, that's how I existed on the world. I walked around like kind of like holding myself, protecting myself. The way I get out of bed, the way I'd walk around would be conducive to someone who was diagnosed with those things. That's how I would exist in the world as someone who was being diagnosed with that. Until I realized that actually I don't have ankylosing spondylitis or arthritis. I have inflammation, which most people do. And I also have pain, which really was just an accumulation of, guess what? Pain that I hadn't digested and I hadn't processed throughout my life. And guess what? When I started to be with that pain, to digest it, to process it, guess what? The symptoms dissipated. But I know so many people who have arthritis and ankylosing spondylitis. That's their world. They're taking drugs. They don't move. They don't do anything. They could even be in a wheelchair, right? But I'm one of the lucky ones who managed to come across these practices, which taught me the true cause of disease, the true factors, and then that allowed me to heal. So yeah, I didn't have arthritis. I just had pain and inflammation. And I still can do because I'm human. I can still experience pain. But when they arise now, I don't go into a story of, oh my God, like shit, like what do I have? Like I've got to go to a doctor. I've got to fix this. I've got to like, oh my God, like, and this is the way I used to respond because I didn't know any better. Now, when I experience a sensation, I'm like, wow, thank you for arising. Like, thank you. Thank you for being there. Like, and then just allowing it to be there and saying yes to it. So, and guess what? It arises and it passes away because that's part of the human experience. But in my essence, I am peace. I am joy. I am freedom. I'm a limitless being having a human experience. So yeah, that's it for today.